It's now time to turn to Anna Zielinska. Yeah, sorry. Thank you very much. She's a legal and political philosopher at the University of Lorraine in Nancy, France, where she's an assistant professor, and she also teaches at Sciences Po. She's part of the Archive Henri Poincaré, and she's also the head of EDI, Égalité, Diversité, Inclusion, which is a research unit, is it?
No, definitely not. It's an activist unit.
It's an activist unit.
It's something that Trump is fighting.
But it is. Oh, I see. But it is based at the Faculty of Humanities at the University of Lorraine.
You know, if you are a victim of something, you come to see me, and I'm trying to.
Okay, that's why. Oh, okay, okay. That makes perfect sense. She has recently edited 2 special issues of the journal Filosofia Scienze, one on Stanley Milgram's experiment and one on Gestalt psychology.
Okay, so what I wanted to tell you is that I'm not going to talk about at all about the history of the reception, like the philosophy of Ludwik Fleck, for obvious reasons, because it was so nicely made by so many people. So I'll just do something much simpler, namely I'll do some history. So the person I would like to tell you something about for a few seconds is this gentleman, Marcus Kleinberg. So he was the best friend of Fleck in Israel when Fleck came to Israel at the end of his life, during the last 4 years of his life. This context is quite important in the sense that Marcus Kleinberg was a Soviet spy, which means that unfortunately, at the same time, he was also he was the executor of the legacy of Ludwik Fleck, which means that when Kleinberg was taken to prison, was in prison for he spent almost 20 years in Israeli prisons. Mossad took everything from his office, including the unpublished manuscript of Ludwik Fleck. So we are lacking, I would say, the second opus magnum of the philosopher. And this is, there is a hope actually that it is hidden something, but nobody knows really. And this remains still a mystery. So I was trying to uncover it. I've been to Israel several times, but I never managed to find right people. Most of the people who I would like to talk with, of course, died. What is important here on this slide, but this is just a silly element of contemporary history, because Israel is a small country and everybody knows each other. So Michael Sfard, who was then a young student interviewing Marcus Kleinberg for his confession, where Fleck is of course quoted. So Michael Sfard is currently one of the major figures, like the most well-known lawyer who works in favor of the Palestinians. So he's hated by the Israeli government, and he works for free on behalf of the Palestinians. Why it's interesting? Because Marcus Kleinberg was already doing this by his spying. It's a crazy story, and I think that we are with Fleck, with Kleinberg, with all those people, we are really in the middle of the 20th century with its difficulties. I'm really lucky to be invited here after the publication of this book. So this book, Fleck, Saved by Science, was published in Polish last year. Probably it's going to at some point be translated in English, as it is an absolutely unique document, even compared to the documents that were already quoted, in the sense that the ladies who wrote the book, they were really traveling all over the place. They went to Auschwitz, they went to Ukraine, they went to Israel, and they met many people who knew something. So I'm going to use heavily this book during our very short conversation. I don't have any way to check the time, so I don't know where I am, but thank you. Okay, wonderful.
Close to be up.
Wonderful. So my idea of why I even work on Fleck, of course, I work on Fleck because for the same reason as everyone here, probably, namely, I want to save objectivity in the field, which is a little bit shaky. So we try to, namely science, of course, so science as a social product. So my own work, which I'm not going to detail here at all, in the sense that it was published, it was published, and it was said already by both of you. In particular, in the first paper, your paper was really very nice, and I didn't ask any question because I was agreeing with more most of it. So. So I was exactly going to claim, or I claimed in my paper, that the standard approach to Fleck, presented as a pioneer of relativism or social constructivism in philosophy of science, is misled. And indeed, his commitment was to the reality of scientific practice, even though he was skeptical towards scientific theories. So this is the nominalism that you spoke about. This is the iron hacking that you spoke about. So everything that you said could be repeated by me, of course. And this approach, of course, I have it from iron hacking, from reading Fleck also, but also from working with Ilana Lowy, who is one of the experts of Fleck in France, and she's also an expert, probably unique in the world today, in the Lviv School of Medical Philosophy. So she's a wonderful person. By the way, friend of the daughter of Klinberg, just to show you how the world is small, because Ilana Levy was raised and educated in Israel, so she knew the family quite well. She didn't know Fleck, but she knew the Klinberg family. Okay, I think that it would be nice, just in a few words, to say something about the kind of democracy that might be defended through Fleck's work. So he himself uses the word democracy in the Genesis, but also in other books, and he of course never says exactly what he means. So I use the notion of democracy inspired by Cornelius Castoriadis, a Greek-French philosopher from the 20th century. In his paper, the paper is freely available online. If you read French, just go and read it. It's one of the two best papers I've read during the last, 20 years. Published in '86. Okay, so what is at stake in democracy, said Castoriadis. So according to Castoriadis, democracy was possible for very precise metaphysical reasons. Democracy in Athens was possible for very precise metaphysical reasons. I like the expression very precise metaphysical reasons. But still, so what happened really was that first it was a society that was pluralistic from God's point of view, and it changes everything from the point of view of our mindset. We don't expect, when we are Greek believers in plurality of gods, we don't expect that there is going to be one overreaching explanatory theory of everything, right? So this is it happened in very different brains than our Christian, Muslim, or Jewish brains, which expect to have one God. So those gods, the plurality of gods, became powerless at some point, 5th century before our era. And really there was this idea that there is chaos, there is no order, and someone has to take a responsibility for what is going on here and now. And this responsibility is going to be taken by us humans, because this is all that exists. So this is very, very fragile, but also this is the only thing that we have. So it's our job to make the effort to make it more powerful, solid, and and stable. There is, of course, a difference between democracy, between political thinking and scientific thinking, namely that scientific thinking, in most of the cases, at least in fundamental science, there should be at the end of the day a theory that describes the world. And in democracy, there is never going to be a correct theory that describes the world, because democracy is precisely this space. Democracy is not a theory, but a space where a variety of conceptions of good is to be welcomed in a way, right? So, so democracy is a framework, and in this sense, the science has to be democratic, because we have to create a space where people speak to each other and where they criticize their views, right? This is the sense of democracy. So the Greeks before Plato lived in a chaos without hope, and having nothing to hope from an afterlife or from an attentive and benevolent God, man is free to act and think in this world. And this is the kind of world where we are entirely responsible about the political system that we are putting forward, as much as we are entirely responsible about the language of science that we are putting forward, of course. So Castorelli said that, of course, we couldn't hope for an episteme, a total knowledge of the world, of the political world, sorry. All we can have is an informed doxa, is you know, a set of opinions, of knowledge as close as possible to something that we aim at, but this episteme that we hope for does not pre-exist. We are inventing it as we go. It's not that we are inventing science as we go, but science responds to our needs. So the language of science, not the reality behind it, but the language of science is also something that we invent as we go, or at least this is how I use this notion, this conception of democracy when I think about Fleck. And of course, no one can protect humanity from madness or suicide. No one can protect science from madness or suicide. So this is fragile, and it's going to remain fragile. And this is all we can have at this point. Okay. I'm going to tell you something about Lviv more generally, because I think that this is something that is not maybe well known. So Lviv is a crazy city at this time. Things that are going on there are just I think, I mean, of course, great things are going on in Cambridge, Vienna, and Oxford, Paris. But Lviv was a melting pot of people who had nothing to lose, and in particular of Jews who just left their shtetls in the first or second generation. They had nothing to lose, no debts towards some former generations, because they really came out of nothing into this world, which was very hostile, as we will see in a second. So the intellectual courage of this time in Lviv, I think, was absolutely unique. And this is where also some fundamental notions, not only for science, but also for our political life, were invented. So I just want to for those who do not know, but I'm sure you know, to make you conscious of the fact that the notion of crime against humanity and the notion of genocide was born in Lviv at the same time, at the time of, at the University of Jean Casimir, whatever, of the Polish-speaking university of this time. Well, it's not Poland anymore. I'm not nostalgic of having Polish Lviv. Lviv is Ukraine. Of course, it's not Russia for sure. This is the new place where Lviv is. Yet the history of Lviv is quite impressive. If you like historical book, I really invite you to read this one. Probably also you know it, but I cannot skip it. Where this is a comparison of two two paths of two men that I'm going to mention in a second, because Lviv is more than just a city. It's really a metaphor of what it is metaphor. Lemberg is just another name for Lviv. It was the name that the Austrians gave to the city during the time of Austro-Hungarian Empire. Lemberg functions as a condensation of our present condition. European humanity is now indictable for crimes against itself. So it was a thriving place that was also a place where the tragedy of times started in a way. So this is Lviv with all the names of the city, you see, also in Yiddish at some point, in Hebrew, of course, Lemberg German, Lvov, it's Russian, Lvov, it's Polish, of course, obviously. I didn't quote Leopold yet. That's true. There are some people in France today who fight for the use of Leopold as the name of the city, but it's very old school. We found it in 17th, 18th century writings in French, but in other language too. In it's Spanish. Okay, wonderful. All right, so I should have. But actually. But actually, those names have the virtue of being used by the people from Lviv then itself. So probably Italian, there were not that many Italians at that point, I suppose. Okay, so Lviv is also the place of this school that was mentioned already by Miguel. Donc, so I just, as it happens, the yellow version of the famous book by Jan Woleński on philosophical school, Warsaw School, the yellow French version of this book was translated by myself, so it's really a part of my life from this side too. The school was extremely powerful, and as I said, there were some tensions. I will not have time to talk about these tensions, but you know that Ludwik Fleck was meant to be a philosopher. He was going to be a philosopher, and then the First World War came. And he gave up the word, and then he applied for medicine, and he ended up as a medical doctor. But during his school years at the Lviv University, he was still following the classes by Kazimierz Twardowski, who was the head of the philosophy department at the Lviv University and the founder, basically, of this Lviv Warsaw School. So the links were extremely powerful. And actually, Twardowski, I'll not get into this in details, but you just have to know that all those people were trying to, from the Lviv Warsaw School, had one enemy, many enemies, Hegel, for example, but among kind of intellectual strands that they hated was psychologism, right? So the reduction of of our study of knowledge to the study of psychology. They were crazy against it, and this is why they couldn't read Fleck, among other reasons, because Fleck looks like someone who is into psychologism. And the story of psychology, it's a great, I still hope to have one day a PhD student who would work on the history of psychologism, because it's really their obsession. The lady you quoted is this lady. I like this picture, very kind of what the hell, right? Picture. So she was the main voice from the Lviv Warsaw School against Fleck. And what we see is that indeed she thinks, and I'm not going to enter into details, but she thinks that Fleck is basically that knowledge studying knowledge is about studying the impressions. And she says it is about studying the content of the phrases and not kind of psychological impressions. So it's really, this is how they saw it. Of course, she didn't understand Fleck, obviously, but I think they were not ready. So, a few words about Lviv. You have to remind me.
5 minutes.
No way.
Discuss. Well, you can make it 7.
So Raphael Lemkin is the guy who invented. So you see his dates; it's more or less our man, like more or less the same period. Invented the notion of genocide. Hersch Lauterpacht, student at the same university, student in legal studies department, they both studied in the same place, invented the notion of crime against humanity. And it was the judge in Nuremberg after the Second World War. All those people were at the same university in Lviv. What is interesting with Lemkin, the inventor of the genocide notion, was that he lived a little bit, he had the same. No, Lemkin was poor farmer, Jewish farmer. Should not exist. The Russian, everybody said in Europe that Jewish farmers should not exist. So his personal life was illegal. For many years, the Russian Tsars has enforced a decree that forbade the Jewish population for dwelling upon or owning farms. So he was just bribing the Russian authorities to be just a Jewish farmer. Fleck was of course, we are in presence of a crime without a name, says Churchill, and comes Lemkin and says, yeah, there is a name for this crime. This is the name of genocide. He was really concerned with the protection of the groups, because the groups, first the Armenians, by the way, then the Jews, and then also the Poles and the Ukrainians during the Second World War were targeted as groups. So for Lauterpacht, the killing of individuals, if part of a systematic plan would be crime against humanity. For Lemkin, the focus was genocide, the killing of many with the intention of destroying the group of which they were a part. In the same area of thinking, with the same obsession as Fleck, as Lauterpacht, as Lemkin, was Ludwik Zamenhof, who invented the language of Esperanto. He was not from Lviv, so it's illegal for me to talk about him here probably, but just to tell you how, but the time is more or less the same, and it's a crazy period for many people. Okay, this is now back to Fleck in Lviv. I'm not going to talk about philosophy. I'm just going to show you a few things that you haven't seen because they were just published a few months ago. So this is the Fleck, the father of Ludwik Fleck, was the first generation of this family who managed to do something. There were three brothers, artists, working. Actually, they were doing some decoration works. They were doing architecture / art, right? And this is where they lived. This is the interior of the first house they had when they were rich, and they were quite rich. It was a really respectable family because they managed to do well. This is Ludwik Fleck's first apartment, and this is another house where he was living in good times in Lviv. Good times because bad times are going to come too. So this is his place from the time that when he was an adult, because this is where he was raised as a kid, and this is the adult house. And on the ground floor there was his lab. And here you have the advertisement of the lab, as you see from the journal. On the bottom of the page, you have the laboratorium of the doctor for chemical research, chemical and bacteriological research, Dr. Ludwik Fleck, etc. So you see this. You have the address. In many journals, you have many advertisements of his place. So here you see him in a laboratory. And there are some traces of this, not necessarily in Lviv, but in Lublin, which is a Polish city close to Ukraine. So he was talking with Vienna Circle. He was very interested in Vienna Circle. He was reading, and he was going to classes by Twardowski. And this is the letter to Maurice Schlick. If I'm troubling you, I do so because outside of my narrow specialty, I have no other contact with German science, and because I infer from your work clear benefits for all scientific activity. So this answers you the question of why he why he went to Schlick. And he said that I have never been able to get to rid myself of the impression that in epistemology it is not knowledge as it actually exists that is primarily studied, but rather that it's imagined ideal image stripped of real properties. Even the choice of material, physics, astronomy, or chemistry seems misleading to me. Why you are not studying, biology or other things? Yeah, I'm not going to read this and all this anyway. By the way, the book was written in Polish first, then translated into German. We don't have the Polish manuscript. It was not preserved. So we only have the German version, and it was finished, as you see. So it was probably written around 32, because the translation, etc. And the letter was sent to Fleck at the end of 33. Fleck responded in 34, as I said before. Yeah, so there was silence, disappointed. Leon Histek in particular really liked this book. Nearly half of the print run still remained unsold in 56. Okay, so this was the flop, as we say in French. And then 35 at the same time he was fired from his job. He had his own cabinet, as I shown you, but at the same time he was working at the social insurance institution. Too Jewish. He was reduced as a part of then Sanation government action. Sanation is Sanation, whatever. It's the right-wing Polish government. So of course it was the Polish. Lviv was Polish. The Polish government did participate to espouse the vibe of the Nazis. By the way, it is very interesting to see that, as you know, when the Germans started the war against Russia in 41, yeah, it was 41, yes. And when Lviv was occupied by the Germans, actually the Poles who lived in Lviv first felt that it was a liberation. So the violence of this for the Jews from Lviv was just unimaginable, right? Because first they were occupied by the Russians who came with the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact to divide Europe between Germany and Russia, and then anyway, tragedy. So this is how Lviv looked like during the Second World War. This is the place where he was hiding in the small room with his whole family in the ghetto of Lviv. These are the memory plaques in Lviv today, both in Polish and in Ukrainian. So this is not forgotten. You know that when he found himself, he found himself in Auschwitz. You know that. And he was cheating a little bit, so he was sabotaging. He invented a wonderful vaccine against typhus. And then when the German soldiers wanted to have it for themselves, he produced a batch that didn't work. Sorry for the Germans, but yeah. He was deemed useful in Lviv. So he could stay. He was working. His lab was working. But then he invents something with his team. And then my brave colleagues, what mattered few months later, right? I continue to work with other people. So it is 42. Then 43, Auschwitz, still deemed useful. So okay. And then he almost died in Auschwitz. Why? Because he was beaten by some Polish right-wing thug who was also in prison, who died afterwards. He was beaten and his ribs, were broken. And he was suffering because of broken ribs in a hospital in Auschwitz. Then he found himself in the worst place in the world. This is where the experimentation. This is okay. This is the worst. Block 10 in Auschwitz with all the people who were doing the worst things ever. At some point of history, we didn't know whether Fleck was participating in the worst elements of this, but apparently no, only the Germans were allowed to the first floor where it was going on. On the ground floor where Fleck had his lab, they were not aware of the extent of the human experimentation that was taking place, just a floor up. Yeah, then the war was ended. He was still a bit rich. He couldn't do anything. He decided to go to Israel. His financial status and independence rose envy. Over the years, he grew embittered. He could at times be difficult to live with, critical, disagreeable, difficult man. Nothing surprising. His Jewish friends, others, those with whom he could speak openly, such as Marcus Greenberg. So Ludwik Fleck found that pervasive anti-Semitic atmosphere was hard to bear after so many years devoted to Polish science. True patriots ultimately discouraged him from dreaming of a united Poland. So after the war, he just left. He found himself in Israel without speaking Hebrew. He never learned Hebrew. So he was unable to go there. This was the life frustration. He was never able to teach at any university in Poland for the reasons that we spoke already. But in Israel, because Israel really insisted on the fact that the Hebrew language had to be alive. So either Hebrew or not. So he went to Nes Ziona, this research institute, very problematic ideologically. And yeah, I wanted to go back to philosophy, but I'm not going to go back to philosophy. Oh, okay, one tiny thing. You know now, but probably it's well known for everyone, so sorry for... we just heard something about American pragmatism, and it was really interesting to put those two traditions together. What I found fascinating is that, Naomi Oreskes, she's great. She published this book, Merchants of Doubt, right? Showing that the current the strategy of the places who try to lie to us about science, like tobacco industry or oil industry. So they use the strategy of fabricating the doubt in order to, whatever, you know the story. So basically, Naomi Oreskes ended up in 2010 when she published this book, and it was a huge success. She said she ended up saying that basically there's so many scientists who are corrupted and we should be aware of it. And she left us with a doubt about science and the solidity of science, okay? What is funny, and this is my last slide, I promise, is that a few years ago, 2019, 10 years later, she published the book, Why Trust Science, the same lady, and she starts with Ludwik Fleck. So she thinks that against the whole mess that we are currently confronted with in the scientific world, Ludwik Fleck is the man to go with. So she thanks many people, etc. And whether Fleck was right about thought collectives, my own thinking has never been Cartesian. And so from the very acknowledgements, and then there is a chapter or two about Fleck himself. So she saves the most important person in society/science, according to me today, because of her fame and importance, saves science with Fleck together. And yeah, that's it. I think it's a nice conclusion.
Good.